Hello everyone, welcome back. In this video, let's understand the server-side rendering and client-side rendering and its differences in Next.js. So let's start with client-side rendering. So for suppose if you have a scenario where you want to get the flight details like flight number, flight name and height and capacity, and you want to pass the flight name for this API to get the details. And for this type of scenario, if you consider flight number, flight name, capacity and height, these details are not going to change very often. So for this type of scenario, you can directly use the client side rendering. And when you make the API call to the server, get the data, and it will come and it will render on the UI page. But for why you have to use client side rendering for this particular scenario is, since these flight details are not going to change very often, so that you can set this particular logic within the get static props method, since the data is in static nature, and it will be executed at the build time. So for suppose when the application is running the build, that's when it will be executed, and the HTML will be ready to render on the browser side. So first time when the user navigate to the page, it will load the page on the client side itself. It won't even go to the server, since it is already pre-rendered on the server while building time, while the application was building. So for that reason, the performance of this particular page will be very faster, and it will load this content very fast. So now let's look at the server-side rendering. So when it comes to server-side rendering, the same example, but if you notice, if you want to get the current running flight latitude and longitude, so for this type of scenario, you have to use server-side rendering, because these, if you have a flight which is moving from one location to another location, that means its latitude and longitude are going to be continuously changing every second. So since this data is dynamic in nature, so better we should use server-side rendering for this type of scenario. To use server-side rendering, there is a method in Next.js called get server-side props, and since the data is in dynamic in nature, and it will be executed at runtime instead of build time, because you don't know the current coordinates when we build the application. So we don't know the current coordinates of the flight. For that reason, every time when the user navigate to this particular page to see the latitude and longitude, Next.js makes a request to server, and it will get the latitude and longitude and generate the page on the server side, and it will come and render onto the browser. So every time when you navigate to this page, it will repeat the same process. So this is a real-time example where you can use the client-side rendering and server-side rendering. Now let's look at how we can write this code and understand it much better.